This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meatpackers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We have a very hard-hitting show. It's a sad period of time in the history of our country. You might remember H.G. Wells' movie and audio presentation on the radio many, many years ago, if you're old enough. If not, you've read about it. War of the Worlds. Well, this was dealing with Martians who had invaded the entire globe, trying to take it over. And in fact, what we are faced now with is war of the left. They are trying to take over our nation. They are trying to co-opt it and, in fact, install, I believe, what in effect would be a socialist dictatorship. And how do they do that? They do that in various forms. And we've seen that particularly this week with regard to the nomination of Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the U.S. Supreme Court. And we've seen it in other instances, too. And I'm going to discuss that during the show. And then we're going to get the views of our very good patriot and friend, Bob Barr, who's going to join us during the third segment to give us his take on it. He's former U.S. attorney from the Northern District of Georgia, former congressman. I worked with Congressman Barr in having President Bill Clinton impeached. You, of course, know that I'm the only lawyer ever to have a court rule that Slick Willie committed a crime. I'm the founder of Judicial Watch. I ran for the U.S. Senate. I'm now running Freedom Watch, which I also founded. But let's talk about this entire Kavanaugh fiasco. As you may know, I'm not a fan of Judge Kavanaugh. He's a member of the Washington elite Republican establishment. He went to prep schools like Georgetown Preparatory. He later, because it's a feeder school, got into Yale undergraduate, Yale Law School. I'm not saying he didn't do his academics and didn't do well, but those are the schools that get you into these very fashionable Ivy League schools. He comes from a family in suburban Maryland, quite wealthy, country club set. His mother's a judge as well. He's been shielded from the world for most of his career and most of his youth. He's lived a privileged life, and he's never experienced adversity, but he's experiencing it now with the vicious attacks of the leftist Democrats, shored up by radical feminists, atheists, pro-Islamic groups, pro-black groups that are radical, all radical. I'm not against people that aren't radical, and others. Okay, this is part of a takeover largely financed by George Soros, the self-hating Jew, who, along with his father, confiscated property from their fellow Jews during World War II as they were going to the gas chambers. These are the people that we're up against, and we saw the viciousness just this week. And although Judge Kavanaugh would not have been my choice to be Supreme Court Justice to replace Justice Anthony Kennedy, I had issues with Kavanaugh because he nullified lower court rulings in a case styled Klayman versus Obama. You know about that. I've talked about it. That ordered the stop to unconstitutional mass surveillance against the American people without probable cause. He didn't need to do that, but we found out during the confirmation hearings why he did it. He did it because when he was a staff secretary in the George W. Bush White House, he was one of the parties that helped craft this illegal and unconstitutional program, which violates the Fourth Amendment. I didn't see how I could vote for anybody who didn't respect the Fourth Amendment and rights to privacy of the American people. But I'll tell you something. When I saw how he was being attacked and smeared, as many men in this country are today, regrettably, men and women should be treated equally. Men and women should have the same rights. There are, in fact, legitimate elements of the so-called Me Too movement, but most of that movement are fueled by a radical feminist and leftist bent to use charges of sexual misbehavior and racism to help further their goal of taking over this country and installing their leaders and installing their judges and installing their vigilantes, for that matter, like Antifa and Black Lives Matter, to run the country. It's barbarian. So that created sympathy toward Judge Kavanaugh. And also the games that were played by Senator Dianne Feinstein, ranking member, and her ilk on the Senate Judiciary Committee by withholding the name of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who had alleged, perhaps with some credibility, that she had been sexually assaulted, attempted rape. Now let's put it in context. You know, I tended to believe her yesterday, but on the other side of the coin was this attack against Judge Kavanaugh. He had to stand up for himself, and I take my hat off to Lindsey Graham and others who came in on the Republican side after the prosecutor they put in there, this individual, Miss Mitchell from Maricopa County, Arizona, proved to be totally worthless and hapless. I mean, it was like Dr. Strangelove. She forgot that she was there to defend a Kavanaugh, or to at least question in a way that would get some compelling truth out, some compelling evidence. It was like she was representing the victim, as she usually does in a prosecution. It was like she was doing a Sig Heil to Adolf Hitler, not knowing that, in fact, she was in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. So I'm happy with the pushback yesterday, but I do believe that Christine Blasey Ford, the victim, I believe that she believes that she was sexually assaulted and that there was an attempted rape. But let's go back and look at the situation. There's no question that Kavanaugh even admitted that he had drunk heavily, in high school and in college. And this should be a lesson to everybody. Lay off the alcohol. Stay sober. If you have to drink alcohol to have a good time, there's something wrong with you. Same thing with marijuana or hard drugs like cocaine. Learn to enjoy life. Believe in God. Believe in yourself. You don't need these crutches. But yes, let's say that Kavanaugh did jump on her during a party when he was 17 years old, 36 years ago. And let's say that Kavanaugh, as seems to be the case, straightened himself out after college. And he's lived a good life after that. And in fact, has helped a lot of women and is a good father to his sons and teaches basketball and has brought women into as clerkships to his courts. If he made a mistake 36 years ago, should that deny him from being a Supreme Court justice? And I don't think that he attempted to rape Christine Blasey Ford. People, tend to see things that aren't there when they're victims. Maybe he jumped on top of her, okay, drunk. So let's move on at this point. There should have been an FBI investigation. This is what the FBI does. The Republicans were not being ingenuous. They weren't being sincere. They do background checks. When I applied to be a Justice Department lawyer and was offered a position in the antitrust division, they did a background check. They talked to all of my friends, associates, and contacts, and they gather information. Yes, they don't make a decision, but it's important to gather information. But now it's too late because the Democrats played games and they backed this nomination process into the corner. And if Kavanaugh does not get through now and is confirmed, for better or worse, and again, I believe that President Trump could have come up with a better pick, perhaps Amy Coney Barrett of the University of Notre Dame Law School, someone who actually is more ideologically akin to we conservatives. But at this point, we have to go with Kavanaugh, because if it doesn't get through now, and if, as expected, the Democrats take control of Congress, including the Senate, then a lame duck session is never going to be able to confirm any of President Trump's picks unless he waters down the picks to the point that he doesn't even have a conservative anymore. Plus, he's likely to be impeached if the Democrats take control of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Perhaps he won't be convicted in the end because you need a 2/3 vote in the Senate, but it's going to grind everything to a halt. And the whole vision of making America great again will go down the drain. So this is what we're facing. And just this morning, Friday morning, Senator Flake, who said he was going to vote for Judge Kavanaugh, did a about face. Of course, we know that Senator Flake hates the president of the United States, Donald Trump. It's most likely that Flake, who thinks he's a good-looking guy, good dresser, I might add, but, is really pompous and conceited. He'll probably run for president in 2020. So he threw a monkey wrench into this by saying, okay, we need an FBI investigation at this late date. I'm going to move Kavanaugh with the recommendation outside of the Judiciary Committee onto the floor of the Senate. And very disingenuous, very clever, very treacherous. It's really too late for an FBI investigation now if you want a conservative justice on the Supreme Court. So to some extent, we have to put principle aside, because what we'll get if we don't get Kavanaugh, with all of his problems with the Fourth Amendment, is someone much worse than Kavanaugh in the end that can be confirmed if the Democrats take control of Congress. So this is where we are today. But this is a case study in the war of the left against the rest of us, particularly conservatives, libertarians, and people in faith. We must win that war at all legal costs, peacefully and appropriately. We are losing our country. And this is why you need support Freedom Watch. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. freedomwatchusa.org. We are your Justice Department. You don't have an attorney general in Jeff Sessions. There's no other public interest group, including my former one, Judicial Watch, that actually brings hard-hitting cases. And of course, we have citizens' grand juries on the horizon. We're going to discuss that in the next segment and what we've been doing. But we are your last hope. We are your Justice League. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. Sign up for our Justice League. Support our hard-hitting cases and citizens' grand juries. Go to freedomwatchusa.org. I'll be right back with the second segment, a special prosecutor with Larry Klayman, because we are in a state of crisis and we must address it now.
Dangerous.
You don't hear, use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special prosecutor.
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
I want to talk now about our citizens' grand juries. We're moving the venue of that, and we've been in the process of doing it from Dallas, Texas to Orange County, California. We're doing that because we need to save costs. We need to regroup in a sense and bring these citizens' grand juries in fact, a very neutral county where we can get the job done. We've had certain people come to us. They're helping us set it up. We're getting rolls of voters appropriately and legally. We're going to have a citizens' grand jury, and the people that we're going to indict first, and this is going to happen in late October. I want you to understand, we're doing this, but there's now much more that we have to bring before the grand jury. So it's good to put it off just a few weeks. And what we're going to deal with is what's been going on with Judge Kavanaugh. I mean, it's unbelievable what's been going on. And we've got to bring in front of this grand jury initially, not just Robert Mueller, but Rod Rosenstein. We just found out this week that he was going to wire himself, secretly record confidential and privileged conversations with President Trump, and use that to convince the cabinet under President Trump to remove him under the 25th Amendment as mentally unstable. This is treason. This is treason. This is what Brutus did to Caesar in the Roman Senate. Now, the president's hesitating with bad advice from his lawyers again and others, and it looks like he's not going to fire Rosenstein. You can't leave what, in effect, is a Judas in control of the Justice Department, because Attorney General Jeff Sessions has abdicated all responsibility to bring about an equal system of justice. He himself is under investigation by Mueller, and he doesn't want to make waves. He's afraid he might wind up getting indicted or impeached. So this is where we are today. So the top targets of our citizens' grand juries are not just Mueller, but it's Rod Rosenstein, and it's also Attorney General Jeff Sessions. We'll get to the Clintons later. We'll get to Obama later. But right now, we've got to clean out the rat's nest at the Justice Department. Of course, Mueller is part of that Justice Department as a special counsel. His authority flows from the Justice Department. So yes, we are proceeding ahead, and I'm going to issue some more information on this later in the week. I'm going to put it up on our website. You need to go to freedomwatchusa.org, join and support Freedom Watch's Justice League, our citizens' grand juries. We will get the job done. We will get these criminals indicted. We will get them tried. We will get them sentenced. And once we get them sentenced, we're going to ask President Trump to enforce those sentences and to have them arrested and thrown in prison where they belong. We're going to do all of this peacefully and legally. We're not going to give any cards to the evil deep state that will work against the American people. We're going to do this the right way, but we're going to do it in the name of the American people. And in fact, it was Justice Scalia, the great Justice Scalia, back in 1992, in a case United States versus Williams, who ruled, he wrote the majority opinion, that grand juries belong to the American people. They don't belong to the three branches of government and even the U.S. Department of Justice, which didn't even come into effect until July 1st, 1870. In the old days, people meted out justice on their own, we the people. It's come to that point again, and we will do it peacefully and legally because this war of the left against conservatives, against libertarians, against people of faith, against everybody who doesn't agree in their radical leftist, socialist, and in some instances, communist ideology, are about to be destroyed if we don't fight back peacefully and legally with a justice system for the American people. Now, in addition to that, you know that we have a leftist media strike force. We've got to take that leftist media out, whether it's the social media of Google, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and others. These are all run by radical leftists who are trying to put politicians in power, who can then feather the nest of these massive social media companies worth trillions of dollars. But they also have the ideological mission to take control of this country. It's right out of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. That's in fact what they're doing. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. freedomwatchusa.org. Sign up for Freedom Watch's Justice League. You, we the people, are the superheroes. What did Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, others do? Other superheroes do. They didn't look to the government to do the job because the government had broken down. Gotham City had broken down. Washington, D.C. had broken down. They had to take the lead on behalf of the American people and on behalf of the world to save the world. And that's what we need to do right now. Our government is broken down. We can't do just what my former group does, get documents mostly, and then ask the government to do our work. We have to do it ourselves. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. Sign up, contribute to our cause, tax-deductible contributions. We need your support. I'll be right back with former Congressman Bob Barr.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with my very close friend and someone who I admire a great deal. I've worked with in the past. I've said this before. He was the only congressman during my time running Judicial Watch that I could trust. The only one who had 100% values that would seek justice. And I'm talking about former Congressman and former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia, Bob Barr. Bob Barr is someone who has integrity. He's on the line right now. I want to get his take on what's been going on. As you know, I started off this show saying that what we're experiencing right now is like the War of the Worlds when the Martians tried to take over the entire world. The left is trying to do the same thing with regard to our nation. I guess the one thing they have in common, Bob, is that they're both red. You know, so. But Bob is also a civil libertarian, and I know, and you can speak for yourself, that Kavanaugh was not your first choice. Kavanaugh's lack of respect for mass surveillance and without probable cause caused some concern. But now that we're stuck with him, we're going to get somebody much worse if he doesn't get confirmed now. And I discussed that earlier in this show. I want to get your take on it, what you think about the current state of affairs with Brett Kavanaugh.
Well, thank you, Larry. And I have, some concerns about Judge Kavanaugh's position on surveillance and, that balance between government power and individual liberty, and that his default position in some of these areas is government power rather than individual liberty. But being that as it may, he is good on a lot of issues, and he is far better than the alternatives if the Democrats had to choose somebody to put on the Supreme Court. So it is important that the nation move forward, and that this administration and the nominal Republican majorities in the Congress, or in the Senate in particular, confirm Judge Kavanaugh. Unfortunately, the last-minute antics of Jeff Flake seem to have thrown a monkey wrench into, or as I would call it, a McCain wrench into the whole process, leaving it still up in the air and doing nothing but empowering the Democrats by giving them exactly what they want, which is more time and another opportunity to boost the credibility of the allegations against Judge Kavanaugh and to continue to attack his credibility. It is just absolutely amazing what one member of the Senate, like a Jeff Flake, can do to the entire country and to the entire civil process of our country.
That's right, Bob. And in the next week, we're going to see many more of these rabid feminists come out of, frankly, the gutter. I'm not talking about Christine Blasey Ford. I think that she had credibility yesterday. But I also think that Brett Kavanaugh, 36 years ago, he was a young guy. He drank too much. He admitted that in high school and in college. Something happened. I don't believe that he raped her or attempted to rape her, but something happened. And in fact, he kind of was a little bit pregnant by saying, well, okay, I think something happened, but I didn't do it. He kind of undercut his own credibility there to some extent. But you can't condemn the guy. Look, 36 years later, he's cleaned his act up. And he's been a good father. He's been a friend to women. He has many of them as his clerks on the Supreme Court. And, you can't condemn somebody for one mistake 36 years ago. And although there's no right to be a Supreme Court justice, like I said, and like you said, and I like his position on gun rights and the Second Amendment, but if he doesn't get through now, President Trump, likely during a lame duck session of Congress, where on the horizon, the Democrats may even be taking control of the U.S. Senate along with the House of Representatives, notwithstanding the impeachment of the president, he's going to have to water down the next Supreme Court pick to the point that he or she's probably not even going to be much of a conservative or libertarian anymore. So we are faced with a practical solution that for better or for worse, the confirmation of Judge Kavanaugh, in my view, and I'll get your view, has to go forward now with or without an FBI investigation in the next week. And if we don't do that, we will lose control of the Supreme Court.
I think you're right. It really isn't even so. It isn't really ultimately about an FBI investigation. You and I both know that FBI investigations are designed not to tell the Senate, that this absolutely happened or this absolutely didn't happen. What this is about is yet another week for people like Michael Avenatti and Senator Feinstein and Cory Booker and all of these other folks in these radical groups out there to drum up additional people. By the end of next week, we'll probably have another 2 or 3 dozen folks out there wailing and ranting and raving that they were also gang raped, that they were sexually assaulted by this guy, and of course then the left and Senator Flake we need even more investigation now. The problem is when you try and appease the left, Larry, and you know this from practice as well, when you try and appease the left, you can never win. And that's what, this guy Flake is trying to do. That's what the Republicans have done, unfortunately, in even reopening these hearings in the first place. They just never, ever seem to understand the way the real world operates with the Democrats.
Bob, contrary to some of the statements that have been made by his fellow senators. I don't think Grassley handled this very well at all, to put it mildly. I think his time has come and gone. I mean, he can't even say anything without looking down and reading it at this point. That's what I admire about Lindsey Graham. It comes from his heart. Even Ted Cruz.
I was not. I agree. I like Senator Grassley, but I don't think this entire process was handled the way it should be. Part of it stems from the fact that a longtime senator like Senator Grassley, who is steeped in the senatorial culture of always trying to appease the other side and find a common course and so forth, even though occasionally you see flashes of anger with what he's doing. That's the way these guys operate, and that's the way the Senate operates. Lindsey Graham, even though I disagree with him on a lot of things and a lot of what he does, how he does it, how he says it, he was one of only 2 or 3 Republicans yesterday who exhibited any real backbone at all. But the entire process, as it started out yesterday, even aside from the fact that, like you, I don't think that the Republicans should have reopened the hearings at all, by allowing a prosecutor from Arizona, I guess it was, to question a witness, like going through a deposition, did you do A, did you see A, did you do B, did you see B? I mean, that's not going to get you anywhere in a political arena, and plus the fact of having to do it in 5-minute increments. I mean, it was a ridiculous way to proceed, and it didn't gain them anything.
The analogy I use was like Dr. Strangelove. She didn't know where she was. She's a prosecutor. She, in effect, represents the victim, not the defendant, not the accused. Right. So notwithstanding the fact that she doesn't even know how to take a deposition, she was going nowhere, and then gratuitously giving support to Christine Blasey Ford, because that's what she would usually do with one of her victim clients, is the fact that, frankly, she was just out of her league. And thank God that Republican Senators Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee stepped in and fired her in the middle of it, because it was an embarrassment and it was frightening. But yes, we need to move forward.
Sure.
I want to talk to you a little bit right now about our citizens' grand juries. I know you've said in the past that you support them. Given the inactivity, the inertness, the fact that we don't have an attorney general, we now have a traitorous deputy attorney general that wanted to wire himself and gather information, privileged and confidential, to have the president removed from office. Citizens' grand juries, we, the people, need to rise up ourselves. Scalia said the grand jury belongs to the American people. We're going to do it peacefully and legally. We're going to be doing it in Orange County, California. We moved the venue of that, but we're also now have more people to indict in that, including Rod Rosenstein, because the president's not going to take any action. He's getting bad advice from his lawyers or for whatever, that if he does this, Sean Hannity is one of them, not a lawyer, just a talk show host, that somehow this will cause him to be impeached. Well, you know what? The way it's going right now, he's going to be impeached anyway. So let it rip.
I mean, the House, the House, if, as unfortunately seems all but certain, Larry, switches to Democrat control in January, the House, the Democrats are certain to move to impeach the president. And if Judge Kavanaugh is confirmed, they have already laid their cards on the table that they're going to move to impeach him. I cannot quite understand what the president and the White House was thinking with Rosenstein. I mean, it appeared that they would move forward and remove him. And now they've backed away from that. I don't quite understand what's going on there for a high-level official, not just an official at Justice, but a very high-level official at the Department of Justice, to have been discussing, in whatever context, whether it was sarcastic or otherwise, wearing a wire to talk with the President of the United States of America is absolutely outrageous, and certainly should have led to his removal from office. His denials were sort of pathetic. He never actually denied it. He said, well, it was factually inaccurate, which in Washington speaks mean it was basically true, but not exactly correct.
Well, not only that, but we know where he's been with regard to Robert Mueller. He's given him wide leeways, rubber stamped everything Mueller wants. We know that he was the signator, one of the signatories to the FISA warrant, the Christopher Steele warrant that triggered this witch hunt. And I could go on and on and on, Bob. The guy's got to go as a matter of principle. And I don't know how Sean Hannity on Fox News, all of a sudden, okay, he should stay. He can't stay. And regrettably, Hannity has the president's ear. I mean, he should be listening to people who actually have conviction like you than a talk show host on a cable network. Not that some of them aren't quite good. I mean, Rush Limbaugh and Mark Levin and others. But, I don't see how you could leave Brutus in charge of the Roman Senate. No pun intended there.
No, it makes no sense to me. I thought they were moving in the right direction, and then all of a sudden, they pulled back. Now, giving them the benefit of the doubt, maybe they pulled back just temporarily to get the Kavanaugh nomination confirmation completed. But now that Flake has thrown a McCain wrench into that, they really need to address the Rosenstein issue. Here they are, the FBI and the Justice Department apparently you're going to get thrown right back in the middle of this Kavanaugh thing, and you have the current leadership, as it were, that we have at DOJ.
Well, that's right, Bob, and we don't have leadership like you showed when you were in Congress. It doesn't exist anymore. And you're right about Lindsey Graham. I love what he did yesterday, but otherwise, we're Tea Party sorts. I mean, he is establishment Republican. We remember what he did with John McCain. There's no war he doesn't like. And on the other side of the coin, he did a number of things that really put a chink in the side of President Trump. But maybe he's come around. Maybe he's seen the light. And I got to give him credit where credit is due, because he was the man on that panel yesterday. He was not a mouse. And in terms of his ability to speak and to convey and to communicate, he's probably the best one in Congress, or for that matter, even in the entire public discourse today from a political standpoint. So I got to give him.
I don't know if I
credit.
go quite that far, but his sense of timing, not only what he said yesterday, but his sense of timing was commendable, and I do give him credit for that as well. It needed to be done, and it needed to be done right then and there, because that whole process was simply dragging along, and the only one that had any backbone up to that point was Judge Kavanaugh. And it was important for somebody on that Senate panel, and it fell to Lindsey Graham, to help Judge Kavanaugh out, because it shouldn't be Judge Kavanaugh that was saying those things. It needed to be a United States Senator to United States Senators.
No, I agree with you. And they basically bailed Graham and Cruz and the others. They bailed the thing out, and hopefully it will come out well. We're going to be back with the verdict segment, Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
This is the verdict segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman, where everything comes out in the wash. And it certainly did. We really appreciate the input of Congressman Bob Barr. Bob has supported our citizens' grand juries, and I hope that he will participate in them as well. He's a civil libertarian. He, of course, ran for president under the Libertarian Party. At one time, he was a member of the Republican Party, but got fed up at their wishy-washy approach to things and set out in a different direction. But his heart is with us. And it's very important right now that the American people see things in a certain perspective. And I said this at the beginning of the show, and I talked a little bit about it during the show, is that, yes, it is H.G. Wells's War of the World. These leftists will stop at no means. As the Soviets used to say, the ends justify the means, and they will use any means to shoot down conservatives, libertarians, people of faith, and to take control of this country. They will use the Senate of the United States. They will use the House of Representatives to remove, or at least not confirm, justices of the Supreme Court or judges. They will use Eastern radical bar associations to try to remove lawyers who are activists and conservative or libertarian. We had just this week 50 professors of Yale Law School sign a letter not to confirm Justice Kavanaugh. They don't really care whether Kavanaugh committed any sexual abuse or assault or whatever. They just don't want any conservative, libertarian, or other person in a position of power. And of course, they also use the money of George Soros, who finances much of this with regard to Black Lives Matter, Antifa, or Antifa, as you might say it, and other radical leftist groups to stir up violence and hatred in this country. They want to destabilize the country. And if they can't take control through the ballot box, clearly they will take control through a violent revolution. We have to stave that off. And we at Freedom Watch with our Justice League, and we urge you to join that, go to freedomwatchusa.org, sign up, support us with tax-deductible contributions. We are doing the citizens' grand juries. We put them off for a few weeks because there are now more people that we need to indict and go move forward with. And we also came up with a location which will serve us even better than Dallas. I was hoping to do it in Texas, and Alex Jones, who I like a great deal, he's having his issues right now. But now we have to do it in a different place, and we need your support. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org, join our cause, become a member of our Justice League, support your real Justice Department, Freedom Watch. We have no other Justice Department, and there's no other public interest group that does what Larry Klayman and Freedom Watch and you, our supporters, do at Freedom Watch. Fitton, who's not a lawyer, Fitton, who hadn't graduated from college when I left. People want to know why I've been critical of Fitton. I don't think he's an ethical person, and I'll justify that to anybody that asks me the question. But more importantly than that, they don't bring hard-hitting cases, generally speaking, and they don't have a citizens' grand jury. So you need to support Freedom Watch. This is comparative advertising. CNN and Fox do it. Everybody does it. Ask yourself, what would you rather support? Someone who's trying to bring about justice, or someone who's getting mostly documents and then asking the government to do the bidding of justice, as Fitton and Judicial Watch is currently constituted does? So please go to freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatchusa.org. Contribute to our cause. Join our Justice League. Together, we will win this war of the worlds, which has been started by the left, and we must finish it peacefully and legally and peacefully extinguish these radical elements of the left. I'm going to be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, take the show. It's up on our website at freedomwatchusa.org. You can also find it at radioamerica.com. Share it with your friends. Share it with your colleagues. Share it with fellow patriots. Tell them to enlist in our Freedom Watch Justice League, because there's strength in numbers, and we can wage a successful second American revolution. But we can only do that with your support. God bless you. God bless your family. God save America.